It's just after 6 a.m. in Stoke-on-Trent. This is John Aberley. Local radio calls him a PA. That stands for Programme Assistant. It might just as well be Jack of all trades, because John Aberley, like his counterparts in the 7 other local stations, is a man of many parts. Reporter, announcer, disc jockey and newsreader.
In 1968, BBC Television commissioned a film, Hometown Radio. It was a record of local radio's first year.
I think there was some sort of feeling in some quarters that it was all a bit toy town, if that's the word. And it was staffed by people who'd never worked in broadcasting at the lower levels. And there was I won't call it resentment, a misunderstanding, I think, is probably a better word, about what it was going to achieve and how it was going to achieve it.
Can you get down there in about 5 minutes? He's got that councillor. Great, thanks.
There is a divided opinion as to whether sodium chloride should be introduced into the water.
Filming in the Midlands, Beasley found that the new arrivals on the airwaves were getting a mixed welcome.
I know it takes all sorts to make a world and everybody has their own choice of music, but I prefer the middle-of-the-road stuff, really.
I think it's very good because it gives you information on what's happening and where you can go to be entertained, and gives you the local news.
Not as good as Radio 1. No records on it, is there?
Nothing wrong with it as far as I'm concerned. I just don't want it.
We've got a record coming up right now, which is recorded by a gentleman called Kevin King Lear. I never knew that King Lear's first name was Kevin. You learn everything here, don't you?
But through the lens, it looked impressive.
I'd been used to scripted programmes, and all of a sudden you watch these people at work and they were talking off the top of their head. They were doing things which hadn't been rehearsed, for example, and all very much more informal than the broadcasting that I'd been used to before, but very attractive in the sense that it was so easy and responded to events much more quickly.
Lord Lieutenant, may I invite you, please, to make a presentation to Chief Fire Officer.
Beasley's film showed council meetings being recorded for broadcast. It wasn't obvious entertainment, but the councils, of course, were paying for this experiment. One young politician saw an opportunity.
I literally appeared, I think, within a week of the local radio station setting up in 1967. I rang up the local radio station, and of course, in those days, they were desperate to have anybody on, so even though I was unknown, unheard, untutored, they were quite willing to let me have a go.
Councils expected airtime, and the relationship with local newspapers was becoming uneasy. It was now vital that local radio got the right kind of publicity. So when Beasley wrote to Frank Gillard requesting an interview, Gillard made sure he agreed on his terms, and viewers got the right message.
By this time next year, we shall be engaged in the business of evaluating, for the Postmaster General, the success that the stations have had in the period of their operation as experiments. And it's on the strength of the assessment that will be made next year that decisions will be taken whether to go ahead with a great expansion of local radio, or whether to curtail the operation, perhaps even to cancel what's happened so far.
Successful or not, this experiment was broadcasting on a shoestring. At Leicester, the station manager was also the football commentator.
Leicester City 1, Leeds United 0, back to Epic.
It was a new way of working. Jobs that used to be specialised were done by everyone.
You would have to do absolutely everything. You would need to prepare all the records for a record programme, you would need to write the news, you would go out reporting, edit all your own material, and that was the great fun of it. It was probably, when I think of all the jobs I've had in my lifetime at work, I think this was one of the most exciting times of my life.
One of the new breed of breakfast show presenters was happy to show off his multitasking skills.
I noticed your hands moving around feverishly around here. What are you doing?
Well, I'm feeling like an octopus, actually, but all these contrails here operate what actually goes to the listener's radio set. I can do it all myself. And personally, I think it's one of the most wonderful times in the morning. I particularly enjoy breakfast. And talking of breakfast at this very moment, ladies and gentlemen, if you're having your breakfast, well, drink a cup of coffee with me. Oh, memories, memories. Actually, that desk,
you know, became so familiar because you operated it every day, did the whole damn thing yourself. I think if I went back now, I could just jump into the seat and do it. It was great fun.
Now I'd like to introduce you to a young man whose lifelong ambition has been to be a disc jockey.
People,
So he's come along today.
I think, felt a part of the community. They felt a part of the experiment, and it wasn't difficult to get people into the studio. It was a sense of involvement that everybody had. There were good days. I mean, looking back, though, I feel a sense of cringe in one way, seeing myself as I was all those years ago, because, you know, I was much too smooth. I wouldn't buy a second-hand car from someone like that. But at the same time, I feel an enormous pride, because I was part of this revolution.
Well, hi there, you good people at home and in hospital. This is Radio Leeds inviting you to sit down and sing with us here in the Odeon Theatre in the Hedgerow, Leeds.
The stations could only afford an hour of records a day, so they had to think up new ways of making shows. BBC cameras came to poke fun at Radio Leeds' opening day. But the station was proud of its poverty and its ingenuity.
Now, our record library isn't as big as the main BBC one, so we thought up bring a disc where you can ask for any record in the whole world as long as you bring it along to the studios yourself so that we can play it.
Hello, this is Ralph Robinson, your man from Auntie, with the only BBC programme money can buy. You can buy time on OPMCB simply by sending a donation to charity. So send in your requests and your offers of cash. Remember, it's your money we're after. Let's hope we get piles.
Struggling to survive. But even at the very heart of the BBC, some didn't think the new idea deserved any funding at all.
There were many at the BBC, at Broadcasting House, as well as Television Centre, who rather regarded BBC Local Radio as an unwelcome baby left on the doorstep. And really, they would just as soon have left it crying than bring it in, keep it warm and fatten it up.
Here I am, indeed, on this wet, cold, nasty November morning at Ed Walton in the nice, warm, cosy home of Mrs. Josephine Cutts. Hello, Mrs. Cutts. Hello.
Here's the local forecast for Sheffield and Rotherham. Little general change is expected with the very mild weather continuing.
I'm going to ask Constable Gunn a few questions for our starting point series. What sorts of things happen to you when you're driving around?
1, 2.
But a lack of cash wasn't the only problem. With on-air keep fit and talking budgie contests, local radio was in danger of becoming a joke. There was little contact with the rest of the BBC, and if the corporation didn't take it seriously, why should the listeners?
BBC in London thought we were completely deranged. It kept dealing with impossible demands. One of ours was, why does our transmitter keep going off air? And back came a BBC memo. It was the sort of thing that BBC did with local radio. It sent a very pompous memo from the head of engineering which said, radio dial, ah yes, transmitter number XYZ. This transmitter has had functioning problems for some time. Unfortunately, we are unable to help you due to the fact that its plans were lost during the Blitz.
Now, what about a record request for you and the family?
Could I have for my young daughter, Those Were the Days by Mary Hopkins?
We'll be pleased to play that.
I remember ringing up the BBC record library in London, ringing up the switchboard at BBC Broadcasting House, and I asked to be put through to the record library because I wanted to order the record requested for the next day's programme. And the lady on the switchboard said, well, who are you? And I said, we're BBC Radio Leicester. That's where I'm speaking from. And she said, there's no such thing, and immediately pulled the plug on me.
It was time to fight back. The manager of Radio Leeds used the visit of a BBC film crew from London as a chance to enter the propaganda war.
The whole of local radio is a risky business. We like risk here. We live dangerously. Nobody would join local radio at the moment, you know, unless they were fond of risks.
How has the BBC reacted?
You mean the BBC in London, as we're part of the BBC, though people don't believe it? Yes, oh, they've reacted. Well, you know, I had one of the, by coincidence, one of the BBC's Gestapo came down, and if you look at the man standing behind you, you know, he's doing well.
Broadcasting to County Durham 20.5 hours every day. This is Radio Durham.